Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. I think we're on the number 12 or number 13, and we're going to have an interesting conversation about artificial intelligence. I want to talk about space. My dad wants to talk about artificial intelligence. We might talk about how they both wrap up together, but I can't welcome you anymore because now it's like both of our shows. So it's like I'm so used to welcoming other people, but yeah.
Nope. Well, welcome to Stewart Squared with Stewart 2 and 3.
Yeah.
2 being 39 years older than, no, you're 39. What am I? So 40, 32 years older than you are.
Yeah.
The So yeah, I want to talk about AI and because I want to beta test a point of view that I've been working on. Because I do this Substack newsletter, which is for those who are listening called "What Matters" in parentheses to me, which is I've been around a long time and I'm old, so I don't really care what other people think. I'm just writing the newsletter for myself. But I'm really annoyed about artificial intelligence. I'm really annoyed in general about generative artificial intelligence. And oh, great. Go away. My computer's trying to install stuff. Okay, sorry.
Hence why you might be annoyed.
Yeah, well, there's always this. No, I don't want to do that. No, cancel that. Yeah. Yes, I want to cancel the update. Thank you. Uh, Sorry about that. Um, the and so here's the way that my thinking goes. And because I'm old and have been around a long time, I have this perspective, which I think you understand and know about. Um, I started looking at being in the computer industry in the early 80s. And at the time, there was a bunch of AI companies around Boston. We've talked about this, but they were really focused mostly on expert systems. Um, and it really didn't work, right? The computers weren't networked. There was not enough data. It was like a theory, but didn't really work. But there was this like cycle. Wow, it's artificial intelligence. Let's venture capitalists all get together and invest in AI companies. And then that kind of petered out. And then there was another um, wave that was really around, I think, around neural networks.
In the 90s.
In the 90s. I have to go back and get but anyway, kind of like that. And the internet started to happen. And so the neural networks didn't really work either. Same problem with expert systems. And you could say expert systems plus neural networks would be more effective, and there was a but, and the but was not enough data, not
Mhm.
connected. So then starting in the mid 90s, the internet started to happen. And along with the internet, local area networks happened so that, enterprises could connect to the internet and the whole thing would start to come together. And it was still pretty slow, right? There was still a lot of dial-up, not really broadband. But then broadband started to really take effect in the aughts. I saw a reference to the Audis. It was like a British thing, the Audis. I like that. Audis.
Yeah, I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then, so then, really the internet started to come together. You got all the social media and that kind of thing going on, particularly in the teens. Um, and there was a lot of research being done. And then Google, came up with this idea of transformers, which really got people excited, but it was pretty much invisible to the public. It wasn't
Yep.
until, Chat GPT 3.5 that it became visible. Although there were signs before, there was like a Google researcher who said this was sentient, and everybody dumped on him. But now everybody kind
It
of
looks,
agrees
yeah.
it is sentient. So there's like a cycle, and so I'm sitting here going, well, from my point of view, I don't get any benefit from this. Now, I know you do, and that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation. But I don't get any benefit from this because most of what people are using is using Chat GPT or the equivalent to like be better writers.
Yep.
But I'm a professional writer. I don't need goddamn AI to help me write.
Oh, I would like to disagree with the fact that people are using it to be better writers because they're using it to write slop. So I now get AI to write for me, but not with the intention of publishing it, but with the intention to teach me things. Uh,
Yeah.
and so then it's like reading just a very dry, straight to the point, boring high school professor, but who has
Yeah,
all the information that you want.
right.
Yeah.
So, but you're better than average. I'm not saying that to make you feel good. It's just like you are. They're smarter
Oh,
than
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
People
yeah,
into this, right? So
yeah.
the average person who's in there
Yes,
going,
yes, interesting.
having
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
having AI improve what they wrote
That
and
is true.
stuff.
Yeah.
And even the DALI stuff, like, you can instantly recognize a picture that's been done by DALI. You don't have to be like artificially intelligent.
Yeah.
You can be a human being and see, oh, that was generated by DALI, because they all look kind of the same.
Yeah.
And so there's all this stuff that been, and so they're burning this huge amount of money doing this generative AI to produce these LLMs. And I don't see the benefit of it. And uh, I don't get the benefit myself.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
In my
Great.
experience in the personal computer industry, right, all the times that something important happened, it benefited individuals,
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
not organizations. And usually, and this is a pattern that I detected some time ago, VCs will start talking about enterprise applications because it's not really working for individuals. So,
But in the enterprise, it's also not working. So this is really interesting. It kind of is working. So the ways that I'm using AI to get actual benefit are I'm getting it to code applications. I'm getting it to code prototypes for me. I can now build a prototype. If I have an idea, I can go out and build it. It's complicated, it's complex, but I get the AI to do it for me, to generate for me. So that's beautiful. The other main way I'm using it is that it is giving me great information. I'm doing historical research. If I need to fact check something, it gave me a dance event. It did something that the internet never did, Google never did, which was I was able to find a dance event by getting on Perplexity, and Perplexity showed me all the dance events for the night. That usually I would have to go into small Facebook groups and like do a bunch of stuff and not get, and it cut right through that process. So that was interesting. Um, then I'm getting it to give me historical facts, as I mentioned, and I'm making my meeting. So this meeting, it's recorded. I can make this meeting actionable. That is the big use case inside of the enterprise. So there are a bunch of things that it does make benefit, but it requires people to learn how to use it. And that's the AI
yeah,
whisperer thing. And that's not an intuitive thing. It was intuitive for me, but it's not intuitive for everyone else. Everyone else is like, why do I need to tell this thing to do this thing?
yeah,
What's so then that's the most people are just like, I show them these AI things, I solve a problem for them, and they're like, oh, that's weird, and then go back onto their normal day, like without any
yeah.
sort of change.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm still using Google search, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that it gives me that little summary.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just looking up a name and it tries to summarize what the name is, and I'm going like, I just give me the fucking name. Excuse me. The so I don't see any benefit myself, and so in the context of right now,
Yeah.
Apple is said that they're going to deliver iOS 18.1 on October 28th, right? 2 weeks, and I've got my iPhone 16
Okay.
Pro Max, and it's been criticized because it's like just an improved iPhone 15, but
Uh-huh.
really have anything new in there except the AI, which is there's it's supposed to be the big deal, but they didn't deliver it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, with the phone and the new OS. So it's going to come up on, and so my whole hope and prayer, and this is where I can see real value, is that AI does end up being useful to individuals, that it actually makes our computing life better, right? So I don't have to wait for the computer to restart or whatever. And so, and I think I've said this before, but my test is, can the computer figure out time zones? Because if
Yeah.
the computer can figure out time zones, like know that I have a flight, and that I'll be in a different time zone at the end of the flight, and then show me on my calendar the time there for the period of time until my return flight, like that seems like a really useful thing, right? That would improve my life tremendously. Just a little thing, but there are a bunch of other ways that
Yeah.
it could
Yeah.
to understand, who I'm emailing with and set up a contact for them. And so Apple's whole proposition, which I think I understand, and I've seen reflected in other people's evaluation of it, is that they have their own small LLMs that operate on the device, which is why you need a more powerful iPhone. You can't run it on a 12 or 13. You have to have the 15 or later. And because they need the memory, and storage to be able to have those small LLMs operate on the phone on device inside kind of the device's firewall, if you want to think about it
Mm,
conceptually. And if that's true, then they're going to use the data that they have is your personal data, right?
yeah.
Because your phone knows everything about you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they'll be operating on your personal data and producing value for you individually. And you know, all the commentary about generative AI and how it's like going to transform us and probably the machines will take over and all that is bullshit, total bullshit, right? That's like
Yeah.
people,
Fantasy world.
yeah, fantasy world. I mean, it's just equivalent in my mind to the New York Times running a poll, then saying breaking news because they had the results of their own poll. It's like, that's not news. You just made it up. And, you know, we all know that polls don't accurately predict what's going to happen. So all this AI stuff, I think, amounts to a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
that's the
love it.
thesis I'm going to try to roll out
Yeah.
in my newsletter.
Well, I love it because it's for me personally, it's definitely not bullshit. I represent I've always represented a sort of like a very out there outlier type of person. So for me, it's extremely useful. But I actually absolutely see the point of the argument, and you can see it in the enterprise because I was in an enterprise that was helping other enterprises try to implement AI, and they were running into this problem. It's an educational thing. It's like using the internet in 1997. It's basically
Yeah,
the same dilemma of like, well, how does that help an organization in 1997? It didn't help the organizations in 1997. Well, wait, did it?
no, it
No,
didn't.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, or most of the organizations are going like, "What the fuck? We got to protect ourselves from this."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Let's see here. Uh, so I've titled this "Still haven't seen any AI around here," and I read this quote. This is from Jensen Huang, who's the NVIDIA CEO. Quote, we're able to drive incredible cost reduction for intelligence, he said. We all realize the value of this. If we can drive down the cost tremendously, we could do things at inference time, like reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is the point, right? That all this stuff about generative AI and huge language models and um, is a feint. It's like a misdirection. And he just spoke truth, which is, you know, when your computer systems can operate like the brain and is not sucking up power or nuclear power, and, you
Uh,
know, costing billions of dollars. And so, in fact, I think he's predicting the fate of NVIDIA, right?
mm.
Because they won't be able to sell so many chips if it all works in real time doing inference.
Wait, can you explain that? Why?
Because right now you have to go and it's a batch process. You go feed a lot of data into an LLM, and then the LLM acts like it knows what it's talking about, but it doesn't actually know what it's talking about. It can't reason or do inference because it can't operate in real time. It has to go get batched again, and there's this process back and forth. And so this is like, I feel like there's a little opening here, like Jensen Wang acknowledged that what we're doing with generative AI
Yeah.
is not the point, right? It's wrongheaded. Um, so so that, I mean, that's kind of the point.
So,
It's like I
yeah.
think we're gonna like look back and go, well, this is like when we were digging trenches in 1999, you know, spending billions of dollars putting fiber optic in the ground to build the future internet, and all the companies
Ooh.
that did that went bankrupt. It's like,
Yeah, I love this. I was just talking about this yesterday with someone. Because the money printers on the interest rates created this negative externality that's tying right into AI. So all of the AI investors have not been accurately being in relationship to reality for the past 20 years because of the negative externalities. And so they're just trying to find capital. Then there's this other part, which that my mutual on Twitter, who I met up with yesterday, gave me, which was essentially there are non-economic actors within that are now investing. So that now invest, and I'm talking specifically about the government here. Also, I'm sure there are other ones as well. Maybe like the Saudi government and all these other things who are entering for non-investment reasons, which change things. And that's like a competition within the VC thing, which is an interesting analysis.
it's like, you know, uh, Vinod Khosla was the first one to first firm, Khosla Ventures, to invest in OpenAI. Like That's brilliant, right?
Mm,
You took a chance on something that looked really promising, right? But all the ones that are doing it after that are like, they're just like doing it because other people have done it. They're
it's a
doing
herd.
it at the result of the pressure and not thinking it through. And so, what I'm trying to do is to think it through and say, okay, what's the real value here, and what really becomes permanently useful.
Mm.
Now, the stuff that you're doing with being a prompt engineer and an AI whisperer is clearly something of use and value. I wonder how many other people have figured that out of like the 7 billion people out there. How many like you have figured out that you can
It's
write
about
software without
it's
writing
about
software?
200 million people. There's about 200 million people who got a subscription to ChatGPT before ChatGPT subscription stopped. And I don't mean
But
to
I'm
say
one of
that.
those. I have
Yeah,
a subscription to
yeah,
ChatGPT. I'm even
yeah.
sitting there thinking, I was writing, well, maybe I'll just give up my subscription because it doesn't do anything for me. It's like, it's a $20 a year. I mean, if they want it, there's word on the street that they want to bump it to
Oh, yeah, yeah.
$44 a month instead of 20. And it's like, well, that's kind of serious cost then. I don't think I want to spend $44 a month on ChatGPT, and particularly because there are alternatives, and I haven't really tried out Perplexity, but I would worry about them too. But it's just like, every time a boom happens,
Yeah,
it pushes past where the value
yeah,
is.
yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of people lose money, right? So the early ones, that's cool,
yeah,
smart,
yeah,
great,
yeah.
go. But after the first like five, it's like it's kind of BS. And so
Okay.
that's what I try to do. It's called
Yeah,
BS.
no. Okay, I have an interesting idea that's going to tie right into your article. So, uh, AI, the real thing I got from you just now is that it's going to be on device. That's the new sort of mushroom growth, is
Yeah,
essentially it's the on device, it's like tied to our personal data. And
yeah.
now a big thing where in the circles that I'm talking to are talking about owning our own data, and they're trying to do crazy complex things, monetizing our own data, not having a Facebook own all the data. Apple is an interesting company because I don't think they actually claim the data. They don't claim the personal data. Their whole thing is privacy. If is there going to be a way
They
where
themselves don't. Yeah, that's your data,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
like they
yeah.
don't they
And so
don't use that as their.
if
I'm
there's
sure they have data, right? And
yeah,
they're smart people and they can
yeah,
figure stuff out, but they're not using your personal data to do something to you
yeah,
with your own data,
yeah,
which is what Facebook and,
yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
other social media companies are.
And so will they, if a time comes, well, actually, I should ask you about this. Do you think there's a time where my personal data, your personal data will become valuable to the point where I can actually make money with my personal data set? And will
Had
Apple
that
allow me to make
had that
money?
conversation many times over the last 20 years, right? Can you use your own data on your own behalf? And no, I don't think that's going to happen.
Ooh,
Um,
interesting.
it's maybe if prompt engineering and AI whispering gets to the point where you can talk to your AI and get value out of your own data, maybe it will be easy enough. But people live their lives, right? I'm living my life. I don't want to go fuck with my data. I don't want to like have to sit there and figure out
But
why it's worth something. And
but
you
with the
know,
AI, that might be done by the computer, that figuring it out.
maybe it becomes your agent. And this is the whole concept of agents and true AI, AGI. Maybe that I think still exists out there as the possibility, and that's the point. That's the thing we're looking for, but we're not there yet. And that's why I'm trying to call bullshit, because everybody's saying generative AI, that we've gotten it. And Sam Altman is running around referring to artificial general
Yeah,
intelligence.
yeah.
That's the objective of
Yeah, no, no.
OpenAI.
His marketing is really interesting. And I'd like to go back to our kind of thing, which is we go back to history. So Sam Altman is speaking his own book. A lot of people and Elon Musk is also speaking his own book, but people seem to call bullshit.
I give Elon a little more credit,
Yes,
though.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They recaptured the big spaceship
yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was this morning. Yeah, they
yeah,
recaptured the booster, and it's like he does stuff,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Even if his We Robots event was a kind of bullshit, right? And his stock went
yeah,
down, and
yeah,
everybody thinks it's just bullshitting. You're sitting there going, he's like being really aggressive about proposing, cars that operate on their own. You can have them rented out. I get the whole concept
yeah,
there is,
yeah,
everybody's going, oh, it's all Elon Musk, and even
yeah.
admitted that he's frequently a little too aggressive in his timing. But
But that's
so
beautiful because he gets it done eventually.
event,
Elon and
a year or two,
yeah,
like
yeah.
get over it.
And whereas Sam Altman is sort of the vibe that now people think it's really interesting. I don't think that he's a con man kind of guy, fully con man kind of guy, but
Ah,
he is a marketer and he's a great marketer. So hold on one second, my phone. So Elon Musk is this guy who is doing really, actually following through with the competent stuff. Sam Altman is an interesting figure because his first Y Combinator company failed, and so far he's been part of Y Combinator, but as a founder, he is somewhat untested in terms of his ability. I mean, he's done this thing, which is really interesting, and also he turned it from a nonprofit into a profit, and then kicked
well,
that. Or
he
yeah,
proposes to. He hasn't done it yet, but
yeah,
they
okay, yeah. Wait, can
not
we actually
that whole
before?
the licensing agreement with Microsoft is really we get so. But here, I mean, this is a history lesson.
Yeah.
So when VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet, succeeded so well, the relationship was between Software Arts, the company that developed it, and VisiCorp, which is the company that distributed it, and they had a deal that was so much in favor of Software Arts that VisiCorp ended up like bailing on VisiCalc. They just didn't do anything for it because they weren't making
Oh.
enough money. And so that was like spreadsheet. Nobody knew what the hell was going on, right? There's a spreadsheet on an Apple II, and so they really didn't have any guidance. There was no experience to go by. So they did this deal, and Software Arts and VisiCorp ended up like in contention with each other because VisiCorp didn't get Software Arts to put it on the IBM PC, and Lotus came in and took over the business, and then Microsoft with Excel. So that's a whole thing. But
Hmm.
so the deal between Microsoft and OpenAI is really, really aggressive. I mean, if I read correctly, that Microsoft gets 75% of their profits until they get the original investment back, which is $13 billion, right? So they have to deliver 13 billion in cash to Microsoft, and then after that, they get 50% of their profits until they get like $49 billion. It's like, wow, what
So I
an
got it.
amazing.
I
So you
got it.
try to figure out how they're going to like renegotiate with Microsoft and turn that into equity instead of a profit share. It's like from Microsoft's point of view, why would they do anything different? It's like they're raping OpenAI. And so you said, so when all this talk is happening about making OpenAI a for-profit company, they have to clear that hurdle because they have a contractual requirement to deliver their profits. And they don't have any profits, right? They're losing boatloads of money. And
Whoa.
so try to imagine how
Whoa.
they work their way through that. And, Satya Nadella and the dudes at Microsoft are going, uh, well, we don't why would we want your equity? You're only worth $157 billion and you us $49 billion in profits. It's like,
And so I got the details, but Sam Altman is basically that's why he did that largest private raise and why he was spending so much time outside of the company. All of his researchers are thinking about the safety, which is an interesting thing because it gets, from my personal opinion, is in the fantasy land. But they're all focused on that. They're all like mission driven on that. And here's this kind of founder who understands the dilemma that he's in because of the market and the deal and everything like that. And so he's going out spending all the time with the anybody who will give him money.
yeah,
Luckily, everybody's trying to give him money, which is
yeah,
funny. And so I've got the
whatever
actual
it is. What did they raised? Is it
6 billion,
six,
6 billion at $160 billion,
six
I
and a half
think.
billion and 157, but then they raised another 6 billion in debt. I think it is
Oh,
a credit line. So they raised a total of like 12, 13 billion.
wow.
And they're losing, all reports are they're losing like 4 or 5 billion a year. So it's like you just do the simple math and you go like they're going to go back to market next year unless they can constrain their costs because the revenue is growing
Oh.
very rapidly, right? And maybe they'll do 10 to 12 billion of revenue next year. But if they're still losing money at that rate, then they have to go back and raise more money. And now, what do they raise money at that point? The
Did a down
expectation.
round.
But even a down round, because once you get into a down round, it disturbs everybody's. And I've been through it.
Yeah.
I've gone through down rounds. It's like everybody starts to question the real value of the company and like, well, you're not succeeding, right? So why should we give you more money?
Which is this human psychological thing that I would love to go into in the history of that. I do want to go back to the history, but I actually got the details of the deal because I was looking at it before. OpenAI has an obligation to pay Microsoft 75% of its profits until it pays Microsoft $13 billion. Then
Yeah.
Microsoft is entitled to 49% of OpenAI's profits until Microsoft has received $92 billion. Only
92
then,
billion. Okay, I got that. The 49%, I thought it was
yeah,
the number.
yeah.
Yeah.
Only then would Microsoft OpenAI shares revert to OpenAI Foundation. Now that
Yeah.
OpenAI has promised investors that it will become a for-profit or give their money back with interest, OpenAI is negotiating with Microsoft to replace its share of profits with equity stake, which you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as I was saying, like you're sitting there, Satya Nadella, and your company's worth 3 trillion, right? And that company's worth 157 billion or whatever it is. And you go, well, why do I want equity in your company? Why don't you just give me the company?
So how does that affect the other investors who just came in? What is their model?
They are rolling on a promise, right? It's like the clause. It's mentioned in there. If it does not become a for-profit company, they have to be repaid, right? So how much has OpenAI raised? We put that on top of the Microsoft thing because Microsoft's on top of the stack. So so they're standing behind Microsoft, which is due to get a total of what, $97 billion. So they have to wait until Microsoft makes 97 billion to get their money back with interest.
And that is profits, and which do not exist in the current moment.
I know they're burning cash. It's like
Whoa. Yeah, that's a
it's filthy
really
wicked.
strange deal.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing piled on top of another, and like Sam's making it all happen, but it's like he is way out there on a big limb.
And he's maybe in fantasy land. He may be in sort of techno founder, like I'm at the top of the world. I'm going to try to raise 6 trillion because remember, nobody remembers anything anymore. But like 6 months ago, he was looking for 6 trillion,
Well,
7 trillion to go put data centers and everything like that. So,
he wasn't looking for 7 trillion. He just made this comment that the
uh,
whole industry will have to raise 7 trillion to be able to deliver.
oh, interesting. Okay, so let's go back into history. I know this is so interesting because there are no historical records for what we just talked about. But every time there's this thing happens, when new innovation happens, there are no historical records. Is that an accurate statement that there are no historical?
Because you have to find the origin. So there was an origin in the 50s when IBM got started, right, with mainframes. People didn't know what was going on before that happened, and then they had to learn how to do it. And then, so you have to pick the origin for each of the evolutions. The personal computer was a new thing that was original. And then the internet was a new thing that was, so, we've gone through this, the personal computer, the internet, the mobile device, and now AI. And so is the origin point for AI back in the 80s, or is it now? Right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
uh, okay, maybe it's now, but I don't think we've gotten there yet. I think this is just the latest bubble out of the last four. Um, when we get there, when we actually get to artificial general intelligence, all bets are off, right? That's when you start worrying about the machines taking over and sentient activity and the Turing test and all that. It's but we're not there yet, right? It's all kind of made up, right? All an LLM is doing is predicting what next word is.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
it's doing,
Yeah.
right? Because it's got this huge amount of data and it goes, well, out of all that data, this is what the next word will be, or what the next pixel will be, or whatever it is, or video. So
So
it's yeah.
this hype, the incentive to hype things before they're fully realized in order for business goals. What is the history of that? Who are the people? I mean, with Steve Jobs is an obvious example, but he did he hype? Did Steve Jobs do hype that wasn't founded in reality?
It'd be really hard to find evidence of that.
Yeah.
Just, one of the things he did at Apple, which I think, and the fact that Apple didn't deliver Apple Intelligence with the operating system is a violation of this. But
Oh.
he came back to Apple. He said, "We do not ever announce a product until we're ready to sell it." Hard and fast rule, because you get all kinds of trouble when you start promising stuff in the future and you don't know whether you can deliver it or not. So I mean, that was a very practical thing, a rule that he put in place, and that's why everybody pays so much attention to the annual iPhone thing, because they won't tell anybody until they actually have it. Right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
little slip of the Apple Intelligence thing is pretty interesting. He's been dead for a long time, and Tim Cook's ruling, and he decided he would he
Well,
would
and it's almost like Apple did that well because Google, Apple, and OpenAI are really funny, and there's Meta as well in terms of the LLM because OpenAI announced this world-changing thing, then they failed to have any evidence that they were even close to that, and then they
But
finally,
they
yeah.
delivered it at 3.5. They
No,
announced
sorry,
it.
sorry, sorry, sorry. No, no, no. I'm talking about a different announcement. 3.5 was real. I'm talking about the advanced voice capability. About 6 months ago, they released they got a huge demo and they had everybody come in and they showed off this product.
Yeah, but OpenAI has no discipline. This is not a
Yes. Yeah.
well-run company.
Well, so this is what I'm talking about because it goes back to our earlier thing, which is Sam Altman going around realizing the crazy situation that he's in that probably a lot of people don't understand because they don't understand the mechanisms of the capital. And so he's going around doing all these things, and inside of his company, all of the inner circle people are all safety people. They don't want to release anything because they're worried that it's gonna. And
Yeah,
so there's this division, and they all
yeah,
left. They're all
yeah.
gone. They're all gone now.
But
Like,
probably not all going, but
yeah, yeah,
5 out of 7 of the senior staff have left.
yeah,
It's like one guy left besides Sam.
yeah,
The uh, okay, I always go based on how well run companies are run,
yeah.
right? You can be successful without being well managed, and Google is the best example of that. Right? It
Mm,
just took off, but they didn't do anything.
mm,
They had
mm.
the patent for whatever it's called, the pattern recognition, but and they used that to do search, right? And it just took off, and then they started charging like a penny a search, and there's so goddamn many pennies, they just had floods of money coming in. And then they're in an environment where there's like no reason to be disciplined, so they're out there trying to shoot the moon and do everything, and not most of which didn't work. Right? They've done some stuff like YouTube. They bought YouTube, and Gmail has been pretty successful, although they don't make any money on it. And it's just a really badly run company. And I'd say that to Sundar Pichai's face because he's not done any better, right? He's trying to preserve the culture of Google and do no evil and all that crap. So, but Apple is an extremely well-run company, very disciplined and very
Yeah,
focused. And
yeah,
so you look around and you go like, well, Facebook's actually a pretty well-run company now, and like Zuckerberg's figured out how to run a company, and it may not be a nice company,
yeah,
and you may hate him and devoid of soul,
yeah,
but it's a well-run company, and it's really interesting what they did with the Orion smart glasses because they didn't announce them. They said, "Here's like a development kit, right? And you can buy one for $10,000 if you're in the software development business." And so they're pointing to the future, and they beat Apple to the punch. Apple, that's the part of Apple that I think is screwed up, which is the whole Vision Pro thing was a mistake.
Ooh, is it wrong?
Yeah.
Wrong.
But they're disciplined companies, so they sometimes don't work, right? And they shut it down and move on. They make a lot of money. They can cover that. Microsoft is now actually a really well-run company, and I
Yeah.
give Satya Nadella total credit for taking what was pretty much a crappily run company. And Steve Ballmer really screwed it up and turned it into a disciplined, focused company. And Oracle's a really well-run company. You can go through all of the companies in the ecosystem. Salesforce is a pretty well-run company, and so and you can pick them out. So that this is the part that I think most people miss. It's not just the technology; it's how the company is run and how effective they are at turning new technology into useful stuff. Right. So, if I remember correctly, OpenAI's revenue is about 75% from that $20 a month subscription and about 30% from enterprise, and mostly coming through Microsoft.
Mm,
And, yeah,
mm.
I agree. The enterprise. I don't think the enterprise has figured out how to use this stuff. Right?
Okay, well, so I got two questions because there's a product, there's how LLMs get put into products. I do think that eventually that will replace the necessity of having a database. They're not going to call databases anymore. They're going to call the API to whatever model. It could be open source, and that is why OpenAI I don't think has almost any moat, nor do any of the other ones because as soon as open source,
Almost. Yeah.
yeah,
LLMs, you can't copyright LLMs. You can't
yeah.
trade. You can
And
trade.
open source is going to, particularly with Meta's money into open source, it's just like there's no way that
Right.
the thing. So, but I want to go back to the psychology of because you mentioned Steve Jobs, and it's I think Steve Jobs kind of has a value for me in understanding who he was that is different from you or other people, in the sense that he was into the 60s counterculture, which I'm just obsessed with trying to understand. But I think that it relates to um, how did he establish a company that is both well run and creative and technology? Because what you mentioned about Google is so interesting, that Google basically just had a money printer, and the money printer in our own age and day creates negative incentives. So that was a company that was incentivized to not run well. And
It's
so,
it's, it's happened before, but yeah, Google is an extreme example of it because of
yeah.
um, I just looked it up. Steve was born in 1955. He was
Uh-huh.
3 years old, younger than I am, or would have been. The uh, you know, my good buddy Brent Schlender wrote a book about Steve, and it was called "Becoming Steve Jobs." It is the book to read, not the other one
Isaacson.
called Jobs or whatever it was, but the by Isaacson was that was useful, but it was kind of like a biography. Um, Brent's had insight in it, and so there were three pieces. So there's Steve Jobs when he started the Apple with Steve Wozniak, and the period of time that they got through to introducing the Macintosh, and then he gets Scully boots him, and then he goes out and starts Next as a startup company, and then he comes back to Apple in the third phase. When he came back to Apple, he'd like paid attention, and he was learning from what had happened previously. So he became an incredibly disciplined CEO. And one of the things that he did, which I just find endlessly fascinating, and they still do it, I believe the Tim Cook still does this, is that he would have a Apple 100. He had an Apple University, and it came out of this Apple 100 that he personally would pick 100 people out of Apple, and 12,000 or more people. He'd pick 100, and some of them might be like the janitor or a programmer, or it wasn't just the executive staff. And they go have an offsite with the 100 best people chosen by him. And so the people that got to go to that were like going, oh, wow, I'm one of the 100. Like, well, I better perform, right? So it's like he created an environment where all of the incentives were to perform, to deliver, to do the thing that was right, and then set
Yeah.
the context is the right thing is for the customer, right? That we serve the individual customer. We don't do enterprises.
So,
And
so this gets exactly what I'm trying to get at, which is that starting in around the time of Google, and I would imagine Sergey Brin, Eric Schmidt are archetypes of what I'm going to get at. Sam Altman is definitely an archetype of what I want to get at. There's this sense that technology is now becoming so powerful that we now have emperors. So we have sort of emperors that have power, and that power is a sort of corrupting influence if they take it personally. I don't think I've seen you get into this. There are other people in the technology world who do get into it. Steve Jobs is interesting because if you look at his home life was real, like except for the emotionally very uh, damaging things that he did to his daughter and everything like that. His actual home life seemed really grounded and
with
calm.
Lorraine Powell Jobs, yeah, absolutely, with his wife and his kids.
Yeah.
That his daughter, uh, Lisa,
Yeah.
that was back from his younger days. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he learned how to live his life too.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so the going to the head of this insane technology in a founding role, what's your take on that and like where it's going?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah. So it's just like the there's this the power corrupts absolutely.
Uh,
That I don't believe that. I don't believe that. But I do believe a part of it, which is that it's going to people's heads that they're in these positions of just like extreme technological accelerationism, and there's no incentives to stop that.
the this thing that's going on with Ben Horowitz is pretty interesting. At Andreessen Horowitz, right? Mark Andreessen's gone all in on Trump, and Ben Horowitz kind of went all along with it, and then he went,
Oh,
"No,
interesting.
no fucking way, I'm going to do Kamala Harris,"
Whoa.
and so he sort of disagreed with his partner. These guys are so effing wealthy.
Yeah.
They're billions of dollars, right? And there are a lot of people that are worth billions of dollars or hundreds of millions or whatever. I mean, I don't get in it because I'm not, right? I've got some money and I live well, but I'm not isolated from real life. And
Yes. Yeah.
that phenomenon, so I think that's kind of what you're getting at is
Yes, it is. Yeah.
money does corrupt and it corrupts completely, or whatever that phrase is. It's like these people think they're running the world, right? They're in charge now, and what they say is what's going to happen. And you definitely see this with like Reid Hoffman, with
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
what's his name that does all the politics in San Francisco. And actually, I don't think he's worth a billion, but
Conway, right?
Ron Conway. He's still a little more practical than the rest of them. But these people, they fly around in private jets. They own multiple houses. They're completely insulated from real life, and that's kind of permanent. Now that's happened before. The whole industrial titans there in the 20th
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
century
Okay.
and early
Yeah.
20th
Yeah.
century. They became extremely wealthy. So the Rockefellers and these people like that. Um, and there is value to that. And because these people can make stuff happen that doesn't depend on federal intervention and
Like a
stuff.
Musk, like Musk, for example.
Like Elon Musk. I
Yeah.
mean, the guy, I may have pissed him off, but I have total respect for Elon Musk. What he's doing with Trump, I think, is insane. And I don't think it'll matter ultimately because people act differently in the voting booth than they do when somebody calls them up and asks them what they think. But what he's done is real. I mean, he actually is doing this stuff. And Steve Jobs, what he did was real. And so that the Google thing was real too. I mean, that really did have a huge effect. So yeah, you have to go back to what's the value of what's done and how is the company run.
Mhm. I'm going to go back to that robber baron. I'm going to go read a book. I want to go read a book about because that had never happened before in terms of merchants, like in the
Oh, I
history.
mean, industry had not happened. Previously,
Yeah.
we were an
Yeah. Yeah.
agricultural
Yeah.
society
Yeah.
and everything was done locally. And, the idea of scaling manufacturing and was huge, right? And it scared the crap out of people too. There were, movements against it. People tried to destroy the machines. I mean, the pattern is there, right? It's what happened with airplanes and telephones, and when we started traveling around. And the fact that you can fly 10 hours and get to the other side of the world, it's like
Because everybody got a piece of it. Everybody got a piece of that Titan thing. And this is exactly the point underneath the point, which is that's we're all going to get access. We're assuming AGI, we're all going to get access to that Titan level power, but it won't be special because everybody will have it.
it'd be completely democratized,
Yeah.
which would be interesting to see what happens to society as a
Yeah.
result.
That's the thing I'm thinking about the most in terms of the accelerationism is just like it's going to be interesting. So, but I want the last question to be focused on the newsletter. What have you learned about what you're going to write this newsletter on from this conversation, or is there anything else that you're thinking about related to it?
No, I feel confident now that I can explain this point of view that I have and call bullshit on generative AI. The And there are other people doing it too. As part of why I started thinking about it is I think I forwarded Eric Newcomer's
Yeah.
thing about how much cash OpenAI is burning and whether it's a valid proposition. And so he's contributed to it too. And it's just for myself saying the standard is what's the benefit to the person, not
Yes. This
not to
reminds
the
me
organization.
reminds me of something I was thinking about. So Google is really interesting because about 5 years ago, the reason why I got this Pixel was because Google was good at integrating the early prototypal versions of AI into it and solving these little problems like the time zone problem that you mentioned. And so if
I
I
haven't
think,
solved that, but the thing that I know is like I use our work email is on
yeah,
Exchange, my Office 365, and we just got slammed with spam. I mean,
yeah,
stupid stuff, right? You don't even need AI to do this. You just like set up machine
yeah,
learning and you have enough data to do that. I don't get them in Gmail.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
something else going on
yeah,
in Gmail. I got to figure that out. But so what's the difference? Well, Google's been using machine learning and AI to defeat spam in Gmail, and Microsoft hasn't. That's an organizational problem. So, I'm desperate to get off of that
So and
proposition.
And so I think there's a specific unit of test that you can do to make sure that Apple does it, which is I actually know I already know that they're planning on it. They you can take a picture of an event and have it added to the calendar. That is for me one of the most useful things. I just need to take a picture of this thing and add it to my calendar immediately. And I tried prototypes of this that people have tried to use LLMs and they don't work. But because you need the device, you need to own the device to have that happen.
Well, the big thing, and I wrote a newsletter about this too, that several newsletters ago, is that Google finally put one guy in charge of the Pixel, Chrome,
Oh.
and Android, all three together. They're now managed by a single organization.
Oh.
So the obvious intent, what they figured out, because of course Apple is fully integrated, is they had to do that in order to coordinate all of the functionality and to be able to, on their own phones, Pixel phones, be able to implement an integrated AI. They need to have control over the whole thing. Now, that's,
Yes.
you can tell Samsung sitting there going, like, what the fuck? You're
Why?
gonna
Why?
coming after us because they
Oh,
like Android, right? And
yeah.
they're going like, oh, so you're going to favor the Pixel. What about us? Huh? We've got like a multi-billion-dollar business based on your goddamn operating system.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That is interesting. Man, the analysis, there's so many layers to the analysis of how companies run
Yeah.
in the effect of technology. Okay, well, I have to go check out of this hotel.
Yeah.
But that was really fun and looking forward to next week's episode.
We'll talk space next time.